exist, Emily.
Oh my God.
I don't remember what time it was, but I woke up hearing heavy breathing.
Oh!
I slowly opened my eyes and looked around the dark room filled with pale moonlight. I didn't see anything at first, but then, all of a sudden, my eyes went to the window, and what I saw made me shiver. There was a woman. She was grabbing the iron bars of the window, and her mouth was wide open.
Bro, close the window.
Such a vicious face. Her mouth was so wide that I could see her uvula inside her mouth. She kept staring at me and then tried to come inside the room.
Bro, fight!
As soon as she stretched her big...
You see the title. Let's get straight into it.
I was 12 years old when my parents died in a plane crash. My grandpa took me in, but he was too old to care for me. My grandpa had a friend who ran a convent school in a small hill station. He decided to admit me there so that after his death, I didn't end up in a foster home or an orphanage.
W, Grandpa.
Morning, we got onto a train to reach the hill station. I suddenly became a quiet kid after the huge shock of my parents passing away. The convent was specifically for boys. There were hostels on the school premise. The school principal hugged me and said, "Hello, Richard. I am Father Baker. You must know, no matter where your parents are, they will always be with you. You will be taken good care of here. Think this place as your home now." My grandpa talked with him for a while and then told me, "I will come to get you for holidays. You can talk to me whenever you feel like it. Just ask Father Baker, okay?" I nodded my head, gesturing yes. I still remember my grandpa's tearful eyes when he waved me goodbye, standing at the school gate. The school was built in a valley, surrounded by hills. There was a huge playground in the middle. Honestly, it was hard for me to be on my own the first few weeks. But with time, I too adopted this new environment, like every other boy in the convent. Every hostel room had accommodations for 3 boys. My roommates, Chris and Bernard, whom we called Bernie, became good friends in no time. We were a team. They always protected me from bullies and any kind of trouble. Maybe they felt bad for me somehow, but whatever the reasons, they are the best kind of friends I earned in life. I am still in touch with them, and I will be as long as I can. Now, back to the story. Our room was faced towards a bushy field adjacent to an abandoned lake. It was the backside of our hostel. There were saplings and broken pillars scattered all over the field. The lake water was dark and dirty. One evening, we were sitting in our room and finishing our work for school tomorrow. Even though the weather was favorable, I felt a bit claustrophobic. I walked up to the window, and as I went to open it, Barney rushed towards me and said in a panicked voice, "What are you doing, Robert?" I got very surprised with this sudden feat of excitement in him. I replied awkwardly, "Opening this window. The room is feeling claustrophobic, so I thought..." Chris got up and said, "No, you must never..."
Bro, feeling claustrophobic is no joke. I swear to God, it is no joke, man. Cause once I got trapped in the elevator at the airport, bro, I really felt it, man. Being claustrophobic is no joke. At first, I didn't even understand why people got claustrophobic in the first place. But now I understand, ever since I got trapped in the elevator.
Open this window after dark. It's a strict rule. Rooms that have windows facing the graveyard...
And why they don't have no curtains? Where the curtains at? Where the blinds at? Y'all just have a straight window where anybody can see you? Like, where the curtains at? Oh, that's number one rule when it comes to having a house or apartment or any place. You gotta have the guy lock the windows, have curtains and blinds, lock the door. 3 rules. And carry a strap on you if you choose so. Like, that is 3 rules of having a place.
Never
They ain't
be
got
opened after
no
dark.
blinds
This was
whatsoever.
obviously some brand new information to me. Even though it has only been a week for me here, I knew almost every small detail about this convent and this place.
Obviously
But
not.
I never heard that we have a graveyard near our convent. With a confused face, I replied,
How can I
"Where's
see
the
it?
graveyard? I don't see any tombstones there. I mean, even yesterday morning when I opened the window, there was just saplings and trees growing in the field with the abandoned lake at the end." Chris went back to his seat and drank water from his glass.
You not gonna answer
Barney
him?
told me in a low voice, "Sit down. We will tell you." I was more than surprised to see this sudden change in their behavior. After taking a pause for a few seconds, Chris finally started to talk. Many years back, this convent used to be a royal house of a British Navy officer. His name was Gerald Shaw. Mr. Shaw had a wife named Emily. Their only daughter, Samara, died from a brain fever. After their daughter's death, Mr. Shaw somehow managed himself, but his wife Emily couldn't take the shock. Pinned down with sorrow and depression, she drowned herself in the lake. Next morning, one of their maids discovered Emily Shaw's body floating in the lake, lifelessly. Mr. Shaw arranged a funeral for his beloved wife. They buried her in the church graveyard, but next morning, everyone witnessed a terrible incident. They saw her grave had been dug up, and her coffin lying over the ground as if someone took it out from the grave. Thinking it a weird incident, they all buried her again. But the same thing happened 3 times consecutively. Every time they buried her, the coffin came out from the ground on its own. The church father then told Mr. Shaw that his wife was a sinner. As she had committed suicide, which is an offense in Christianity, the Holy Church graveyard is refusing to accept her body. Out of rage and disgust, Mr. Shaw took his wife's body and buried her in that field, which was then the garden of the house. Since then, people say Emily Shaw's spirit roams that place at night, and if anyone sees her, she tries to get their soul by killing that person.
Oh my God!
And her tombstone is probably covered in weed and saplings, hiding from the sunlight. I said, "And how much of this story is actually true?" Bernie looked at me and replied, "Last year, a boy from room 707 fell asleep keeping the window open the entire night. He was alone in the room as his roommates went home for the holidays. Next day, when everyone went to call him for prayer, he was found dead.
Oh my
his
God.
eyes were turned to the other side, with his tongue.
Oh my God.
It was as if someone choked him to death in his sleep. Old places like this always come up with a bizarre story from its past. I got back to my homework saying, "Well, once you die, you are dead. This is the truth of life. Otherwise, my parents would have come back to me long back." Obviously, a comment like this silenced both Chris and Bernie that night.
You should never have said that.
I realized how the entire school blindly trusts this story about the Shaw family. There were many rooms with windows facing the graveyard, so it was almost impossible to lock all those rooms. It even surprised me how each boy in our school solely believes this story and never breaks the rule by opening their room windows after dark. Even boys with windows facing other sides of the valley were scared to open them after sundown. I had no intention to make a fuss about all this because I hardly believed the story, and also, at the same time, it didn't bother me. So be it. I never cared about whether the window was open or closed. Holidays came and we all got ready to go home. We were packing our bags when our cleaning lady, Miss Bright, came in. She said in her caring nanny voice, "My children are ready to go home, it seems. Who will miss poor Miss Bright now?" We smiled.
Nobody.
And said, "We will be back soon and everyone will miss her." She was really caring towards all of us. She started to clean the room before holidays, and we again got busy packing. Miss Bright opened the window and sunlight flooded inside the room. I went near the window and stood there silently, watching the black lake and the bushy field. Chris called me and said, "Let's go, Robert. Your grandpa is waiting downstairs." We left for home. It was a 1-month holiday. I stayed with my grandpa and had a lot of fun. My grandpa told me that my parents have left enough money for me so I don't have to worry about my higher studies and life ahead. I looked at him and said, "Grandpa, do you believe people can come back even after death?" He obviously didn't expect such a question, that too from me. So he looked at me with surprised eyes, then said, "Well, they don't have to come back if they stay in your heart. Like your parents, they never left you. They are still with you." I was expecting an answer like that, so I didn't extend the conversation. After the holidays, we returned to our school. Chris and I were downstairs saying goodbye to my grandpa, while Bernie went up to unlock our room. The school allowed us to carry our own room key. As soon as he opened our hostel room, I heard a scream. We immediately
Hold
went to our
up
room and saw Bernie lying unconscious on the floor. But there was so much more happening other than that. The room was completely ransacked, as if someone took out their frustration on each and every piece of furniture inside the room.
Oh, the old lady forgot to close the window? Oh, y'all done for. Y'all done for. Grandpa, take me back with you. ASAP.
Not just that, there were bloody footprints all over the room floor, and the window was wide open. It later came out that Miss Bright forgot to close the window, but I was not ready to accept this explanation that some woman's ghost did this to our room. Miss Bright got suspended for a few weeks for her careless behavior. Bernie got admitted to the local hospital, and Chris went to stay with him that night. The excessive seriousness of the situation made me adamant to check out how much this ghost story was true.
Don't
I was
investigate.
so angry with Miss Bright getting suspended over such a small incident that I made up my mind that night. After dinner, I came back to my room and opened the window.
No.
It was 8 o'clock. A cool breeze came in. The abandoned backside and lake stood still. The sounds of crickets made the atmosphere spooky and mysterious. I went back to my bed and said to myself, let's see if you really exist, Emily.
Oh my God.
I don't remember what time it was, but I woke up hearing heavy breathing.
Oh!
As I slowly opened my eyes and looked around the dark room filled with pale moonlight, I didn't see anything at first. But then, all of a sudden, my eyes went to the window, and what I saw made me shiver. There was a woman on the window. She was grabbing the iron bars of the window, and her mouth was wide open.
Bro, close the window.
Such a vicious face. Her mouth was so wide that I could see her uvula inside her mouth. She kept staring at me and then tried to come inside the room.
Bro, fight!
As soon as she stretched her big, skinny hand, I felt a soft touch at the back of my neck. I looked back and saw my mom was standing there. She looked like a reflection. She then said in a low voice, Robbie, get up, switch on the lights. I don't know from where I got the courage at the time. I jumped from my bed and switched on the lights. I saw no one at the window. Just the dark lake stood outside. I shut the window immediately, and that night, I stayed with another classmate. I spoke to no one about this except to my friends Chris and Bernie. Bernie and Chris said, my mom loves me so much that she actually came to save my life that night. After all, love surpasses all evil in this world. I cried hearing this, but their words gave me hope and positivity. I don't care if you believe my story, but I am happy that my parents are still watching my back from wherever they are now. I finished my schooling there last year, but as long as I stayed in the convent, none of us ever opened the window again.
Oh God. That cheap jump scare. That was a cheap jump scare. I went to class, bro.
It was like he knew what he was supposed to do.
I should have downloaded the video. Yeah. Oh.
Last week. I am Sam. I study in high school. We had a teacher named Mr. Smith. He taught us chemistry.
Bro, his
One day
chin.
after class,
Bro, his face
Mr. Smith
strong.
told us that he is planning to go on a long holiday, which is why he might not be present at the next classes. He told us that until our principal can arrange for someone to take his class for a while, we should prepare for our lessons on our own. Generally, everyone was excited to hear that. We all thought at least the chemistry class was going to be off period for a while. Next day, when we went to school, something unexpected happened. As soon as we went in front of the classroom and opened the classroom door, everyone screamed in horror. A body was hanging from the glass ceiling. It was our chemistry teacher, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith committed suicide in his very own classroom. His neck snapped to the other side when he jumped from the wooden chair while trying to tie the rope around his neck. Many of the students fainted. Many started vomiting. I became numb. I stood there silently like a statue and watched his body dangling in the air. The school immediately went into a lockdown. Police cars stormed the front of the school. Our parents came to take us home. We stood outside the school gate and watched the paramedics taking our chemistry teacher's body away.
But what made him
Next
do
day,
that?
our principal addressed the entire school by giving his condolences to Mr. Smith's family. Our school life went back to normal, but we often heard teachers and seniors talking about Mr. Smith's unfortunate death. Some even said that his wife was having an affair with one of his friends. Probably, this is why he decided to commit suicide. With more days passing by, people started to forget about this incident, but the classroom where Mr. Smith committed suicide remained unused. Needless to say, it was almost awkward for everyone to use that classroom like every other one. Our principal declared that the
He
classroom
looked like Tony
would be
Stark.
renovated and turned into a lab. One day, I went to the washroom in the middle of our English class. The boys'
Why
washroom
so
was right
dark?
beside the chemistry class. I was passing through the classroom door just when an eerie feeling grabbed my heart. I felt like someone was inside the classroom. I opened the door to check myself, but there wasn't anyone. I found myself standing inside an empty classroom. Suddenly, I heard someone's voice really close to my ear. It felt like someone was standing beside me and whispered in my ear, "Help me, Sam." I immediately turned around, but there was no one. For a second, I felt as if Mr. Smith spoke into my ears. After that day, many rumors started to roam around the school. Teachers said that the chemistry classroom is haunted. Our school security guard went to take his usual round at night and saw a man standing in the dark hallway with blood-red eyes. His neck was snapped, making his head hang from it. Even though these incidents were only witnessed by some, the entire school started to believe that Mr.
Hold on,
Smith's
let me
spirit
change the brightness.
actually...
God, hang on. All right, we're back, y'all. This image is creepy. As a matter of fact, I can use it as a thumbnail. I can use that as a thumbnail.
actually roams in the school. One day, I was talking to a friend, standing in the school corridor when I saw two cops leaving our principal's office. I overheard one of the cops saying to our principal, "Yeah, this is just a case of suicide, hence, we don't think further investigation is needed anymore. So, we are closing this case, Mr. Wright." Our principal, Mr. Wright, nodded his head with a sad face, and the cops left. That night, I had a terrible dream. I was standing in the chemistry classroom. Above my head, Mr. Smith's lifeless body was hanging from the ceiling. I looked up and saw his dead face. He suddenly opened his eyes and said, "You must bring him here, Sam."
Oh, this could be a thumbnail.
As I woke up, drenched in sweat, I realized it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I tried to think the entire day. Why am I having this weird lifeless body was hanging from the ceiling? I looked up and saw his dead face. He suddenly opened his eyes and said, "You must bring him here, Sam. You must help me." As I woke up, drenched in sweat, I realized it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I tried to think the entire day. Why am I having this weird feeling about Mr. Smith's death? And who was the person he was telling me to bring to him? There were so many questions, but no answers. I expected it was just my mind playing tricks on me until the next horror unfolded. Our school organized a basketball match after the last class. It was 5 p.m. when the match started. All the students and teachers stayed back after dark that day. Principal Wright was supposed to honor the winning team with the house cup.
Don't look like Tony
Everyone
Stark.
was cheering on the basketball court like crazy. Suddenly, my eyes went on Mr. Wright, and I saw his face losing color. It seemed like there wasn't a single drop of blood in his face. His eyes were fixed to the middle of the basketball court. He wasn't watching the game, rather staring at something. I followed his eyes, but saw nothing except players running around to score a point. Principal Wright suddenly got up and said something to our gym teacher, who was sitting right next to him, then left for the exit. This is when I heard that spine-chilling voice. "Bring him, Sam. Bring him to the chemistry classroom." I don't know what happened to me, but I somehow lost control over my legs for a moment. I felt someone pulled me from my seat and made me follow him. As soon as I came out, I saw Mr. Smith walking away amidst the school corridor. I said in a shaken but clear voice, "Mr. Smith, my father would like to speak with you for a moment. It is urgent." My father wasn't there. I made all this up. Trust me or not, I felt like I was in a mode of trance and
Oh,
someone else
he being
was speaking
possessed.
from my mouth. Mr. Smith got really annoyed and started to walk towards me. He said in an irritated voice, "Fine, where is he? I don't have much time. I need to go somewhere. Come, let's make it quick." I took him to the chemistry classroom. Mr. Wright went inside and said, "Why did you tell him to wait here? There are plenty of places in school to talk." The classroom was, as usual, empty. Mr. Smith went inside and looked around, then said, "Where's your father? I don't see him. What kind of joke is this?" But before I could answer, the classroom door shut in my face.
Oh!
Mr. Wright started to scream terribly, as if there was someone else with him too. I heard him saying, "Oh my God, Smith, you are supposed to be dead." The next words that came out of his mouth were in fragments, but I could gather the idea was that he was apologizing to someone, saying that he didn't mean to pursue his wife with romantic interest and something more like that. Then he started to scream terribly. The game stopped, hearing his painful scream, and a few students came out. Everyone gathered outside the classroom. We all kept hearing Principal Wright begging for mercy to someone. Teachers tried to open the door, but nothing happened. He kept screaming for a few more minutes, and then suddenly, it all went silent. The cops were informed, and when they broke the door, we found our principal's body hanging from the ceiling in the same manner as Mr. Smith.
Oh my
No one
God!
could say what exactly happened that night inside the classroom. When the cops asked me, did I see anyone going inside the room with Mr. Wright, as I was the first one to reach near the classroom door, I replied, I went to the washroom and came out hearing his scream, just like everyone else. Later, a few teachers said that Mr. Smith's wife has confessed to the cops about her affair with our school principal. This is why Mr. Smith took his life, due to depression and anxiety. But no one knows what happened to Principal Wright. They think he committed suicide out of guilt, but they don't know what I know. I think it was Mr. Smith who lured Mr. Wright using me as a medium and then took his final revenge. But one question that still confuses my mind is that, why did my chemistry teacher choose me to get his revenge? What do you think?
Oh Lord. Dio Joski.
No plans tonight? Spend time.
Yeah, for now I'm gonna just download the video. Field trip.
I am Miley from Australia. This happened when I was studying in high school. Our school used to arrange field trips for students of every batch. The field trips varied on the subject teacher who was in charge of it. For example, our history teacher often took us to archaeological sites or museums. Almost every student took part because field trips carried good grades and it was more exciting than any boring lecture. My friend Corey and I decided to attend an upcoming field trip. Our teacher, Miss Williams, gave us a form and told us to bring it back with our parents' signature on it by tomorrow. The destination of the field trip was Lake Mungo. For those who aren't aware of this venue, let me give you a brief idea of this place. Lake Mungo is a dry lake located in New South Wales, Australia. The lake is the central feature of Mungo National Park and is one of 17 lakes in the World Heritage. Many important archaeological finds have been made at the lake, most significantly, the discovery of remains of Mungo Man and Mungo Woman, the oldest human remains in the world to be ritually cremated. The night before the field trip, Corey stayed with me. After dinner, we went to my room and started to finish packing. Corey suddenly said, "Do you know, there are rumors of that place carrying bad omens." I looked at her with surprised eyes and said, "Stop talking like a freak." She laughed and said, "No, it's true. I read about the place. This is probably the most ancient burial ground in the world so far." I said, "Yeah, I heard that too. Why is Miss Williams even taking us to dead people's land? I mean, there are so many other places to see." Corey mocked me and said, "Why? You scared, butterfly?" and started to laugh. I rolled my eyes and didn't reply to her nonsense. My mom came upstairs and said, "Have fun on your field trip, girls. Now, get some sleep. You will have to wake up early tomorrow." We chatted for a few more minutes and then fell asleep. The next morning, we got onto the school bus and our journey began. The vast empty fields surrounded by small brown hills was quite a sight to watch. I slowly rolled down my window and cool air refreshed my mind. Other students were making jokes and pulling each other's legs, but suddenly, Corey again brought up the topic of how Mungo Lake is haunted by ancient demons, and everyone got busy talking about that. I, on the other hand, was feeling really irritated with this baseless discussion, so I plugged in my earphones and started to enjoy the ride. The sunlight wasn't too bright that day. A partially clouded sky made the weather ideal for a thunderstorm. I heard Miss Williams tell our bus driver, "We need to hurry. I don't want them to stay over after dark." We reached our destination around 3 p.m. Even though it was afternoon, the dark clouds surrounded the entire sky and the sun disappeared into them. Miss Williams started to tell us about the historical records of this place. Everyone took notes on their own for their project. Groups of people went on exploring the place on their own. It was a deserted land. No one would believe that this place used to be a lake at some time. Corey and I ventured on our own. I was looking around trying to find something unique when an area caught my eyes. The place was filled with huge rocks scattered here and there. I saw a rock about 10 to 15 hands distance from me. The reason why it caught my attention was the graffiti made on it. I told Corey, "I'll be back in some time." She went to another group of girls saying, "Okay, don't go too far." I then walked towards the rock. As soon as I reached near it, I saw tribal human figures were drawn on it. The drawings no doubt felt ancient. After looking at them carefully, I realized these aren't some random drawings. There was a story in them. A group of people seemed to worship a stone-like figure. The figure had no shape except it was red in color. Then, the stone started to reflect light in the next sequence of the drawings. At the last one, the people lied on the ground dead while a black wind seemed to go into the stone. Obviously, I didn't understand what it was, but I knew they were performing some kind of ritual. I was thinking to ask Miss Williams about it when suddenly a flash of lightning struck in the distance. Raindrops started to fall from the sky, and everyone decided to head back. I ran towards the bus, and we started for home. After coming back home, I made a sketch of that drawing from my imagination so that I can show it to our history teacher the next day. Next day when I reached school, I saw Corey standing in the hallway while 3 girls gathered around her. She was showing something to them with her bright eyes. I walked towards the group and noticed Corey holding something in her palm. I asked in a curious voice, "What's going on here?" Corey said, "Look what I found yesterday," and showed her palm to me. As soon as I witnessed the thing in her hand, the hair at the back of my neck stood up. It was a small red stone, exactly like the one in the drawings from the lake. I said, "You shouldn't have taken this from the site, Corey." Corey said, "Relax, this is just a rock. I'm going to make a chain and wear it. I just thought it's pretty, so I took it. No one's going to send me to prison for stealing a useless rock, Miley." I know it might seem I was overreacting, but something in my heart kept telling me it wasn't just a rock. I didn't say anything more to her because I knew she is not going to believe me anyway.
She about to get messed up.
I went to Miss Williams. She was sitting in the classroom, working on her own. I said in a low voice, "Miss Williams, can I come in?" She looked at me over her glasses and said, "Why aren't you at the cafeteria eating lunch?" I smiled awkwardly and said, Yeah, I just ate. I actually have something to ask you." She said, "Sit down. What is it?" I showed her my copy and explained everything. She took a good look at my drawings and appreciated me for having an eidetic memory. She then said in a serious voice, "According to my understanding, I think this is a worship ritual. But this is not just any ritual. It's probably a cult ritual." I looked at her with a confusing face and said, What does that mean?" Miss Williams pointed to the drawings and said, "Here, you see this rock? This is not just any rock. This is a symbol of Mungo's people's Dark Lord. Because in the next picture, they are offering their souls to the Dark Lord, which is why this rock start to enlighten. And on the last picture, it acquires their souls, which are these black wind-like figures, leaving them dead." My head now started to throb in fear. I said in a calm but shaken voice, "So, what will happen if a common man takes this stone with him?" She smiled and said, "Well, I can't say how far all of this is true, but any object involved with ancient ritual is said to be cursed. Using that object from a layman's perspective or moving it away from its site are said to cause huge trouble. But why are you asking me this?" I changed the topic saying, "Nothing, it's just something came to mind." That day, while going home after school, I told Corey, "Listen, you must get rid of this stone, Corey. I mean, you were only saying the other day how haunted that place is. Don't you think taking something from that place can result in a bad omen?" Let's just throw away this stone before it harms you in some way. But suddenly, Corey's face changed. Her eyes went big and anger took over. She said in a spine-chilling voice, "This stone is mine now. Am I clear, Miley?" "But you are not understanding, Corey. This stone is cursed. I saw the graffiti." Before I could finish, Corey pushed me onto the ground while making a devilish grunt. I couldn't believe this was the same Corey I knew. I could see clearly what the stone was doing to her. I watched her walk away. After coming back home, I tried many times to call and text her, but she didn't respond. The next morning, my mom woke me up in her panicked voice. Miley, wake up." I woke up and saw my mom crying. I asked her, "What's wrong, Mom? What happened?" She replied in a sobbing voice, "Your friend Corey is no more, Miley. She committed suicide last night. Her mom just called. She was crying like hell." We all rushed to Corey's house and saw paramedics taking her body out on a stretcher. Her body was covered, but I saw her hand dangling from it. Her lifeless, pale hand kept hanging. I noticed her hand closed into a tight fist, but when they pushed her body inside the ambulance, a thing fell on the road from her closed fist. It was the red stone. Corey's mother told us she found Corey lying on the floor. She slashed her own throat with her kitchen knife. They have no idea why she did that. After coming home from school, Corey went to her room and never came out. She even skipped her dinner that night. They have no idea why she went to the kitchen and took the knife. This all might seem like a coincidence, but I knew it was the cursed stone that took her soul. I picked up the stone from the ground and took it back to Mungo Lake the next day. I couldn't find the site with the graffiti this time, but I threw the red stone into the sand and came back. I feel extremely sad that I couldn't save my friend from getting involved in an ancient curse.
Dang. That's dark. But moral of the story, well, for this one, leave stuff alone and mind your business. You know, but W Storytelling this was by IMR, I believe. I'm not entirely sure, but the link to the original video will be in the description down below. But meanwhile, follow me on Instagram. We only currently 100 100 followers away from 1,000 followers on Instagram. So please follow me on Instagram. Link is in the description. Alright, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. If y'all did, make sure y'all Kaiju punch the like button in the face like a boss. Peace out. Please check out my previous reaction. All I see is like a little shadow. That could be anything. Oh! Oh, that ain't no ordinary shadow.